So after 30 days of striking the Houthis, President Trump wasn't getting the results he expected, so he quit, walked away entirely, declared victory. Actually, at least that's the story according to a new article in the New York Times that we're going to run through today. I'm pretty sure this was written as like a gotcha for the president, but while there are some things in here that are concerning, to say the least, there's quite a bit of other takes that I think are a positive development and probably good signs. But, like a lot of this stuff, it's relatively nuanced, and I thought it would be worth walking through this article and kind of talking through what we know so far. So this article, of course, will be linked in the description below. It's titled, Why Trump Suddenly Declared Victory Over the Houthi Militia. They say when he approved a campaign to reopen shipping in the Red Sea by bombing the Houthi militant group into submission, President Trump wanted to see results within 30 days of the initial strikes. By day 31, Mr. Trump, ever leery of drawn-out military entanglements in the Middle East, demanded a progress report. But the results were not there. The United States had not even established air superiority over the Houthis. Instead, what was emerging after 30 days of a stepped-up campaign against the Yemeni group was another expensive but inconclusive American military engagement in the region. Now, this is being viewed already a couple different ways. You have some folks saying this is an indication that the president doesn't have the stomach for a larger, more expensive, more costly war in terms of personnel and equipment. And in this specific region, you might be looking at what a possible conflict with Iran would provide. It probably would lead to more American losses than we've seen in this engagement with the Houthis, which at this point has just been material. There's been no personnel losses, nobody killed or even wounded by the Houthis. So some are viewing it in that sense, saying Trump doesn't have the stomach for a larger war and what might be needed to carry through on some of the threats against Iran. Let's say they don't move forward with the nuclear negotiations. The other side of this that I think is not being discussed enough is, or maybe he just doesn't want to get us into further conflicts. Remember, that was a big talking point on his campaign. I would say it hasn't really played out like he expected, but avoiding a war, if we can avoid a war, is not always a bad thing. This is where it starts to get complicated. The Houthis, bad group, terrorist organization. I don't like them. I wish they didn't exist. I think striking them was the right thing, and more on that in a second. But if you're not achieving the desired results at some point, you need to reevaluate and decide, should we continue this course of action? And from this article, it looks like that reevaluation was done and the determination was made, this isn't doing it. We need to prioritize efforts elsewhere. They say the Houthis shot down several MQ-9 Reaper drones and continued to fire at naval ships in the Red Sea, including at American aircraft carriers. And the U.S. strikes burned through weapons and munitions at a rate of about $1 billion in the first month alone. It did not help that two $67 million FA-18 Super Hornets accidentally tumbled off the carrier into the sea. By then, Mr. Trump had had enough. So all of this in the first 30, 31 days, right? They say the United States would halt the bombing campaign and the militia would no longer target American ships in the Red Sea, but without any agreement to stop disrupting shipping that the group deemed helpful to Israel. This is an important aspect because I'm seeing this misunderstood by a lot of folks. The Houthis have not ever said that they are going to stop attacking commercial vessels. This agreement between the United States and the Houthis is exclusive to U.S. military and commercial vessels not being attacked by the Houthis. So long as we don't attack them, they allow for the safe passage of American ships. Now, we haven't seen the Houthis restart attacks against commercial vessels. All of their energy for a while now, since December, has been focused against military targets and or Israel. So maybe they never lash out at commercial vessels in the Red Sea ever again, but that is not a part of the agreement, not anything the Houthis agreed to. And they have gone, they've been releasing media recently. They just put out a video today talking about, again, they're framing this as the American failure to protect Israel. They're saying that they're going to continue operations to try to carry out an air siege of Israel by launching missiles and drones at Ben Gurion Airport specifically, and then a sea siege. That's not even naval siege, is probably a better way to put that, by attacking ships and preventing ships from moving through the Red Sea that are affiliated with Israel in any way, shape, or form. So as of now, there is no agreement that the Houthis are going to stop attacking ships. And the way I've seen that presented is people say, mission accomplished. The Houthis are no longer attacking ships. Kind of. They're no longer attacking American ships, which is one part of a much larger equation. And it gets into, why are we there in the first place? Why are we doing this at all? And I feel like this is where you get into policy differences. And, I have an opinion here, but it doesn't mean that my opinion is right. And you can see people make what I think are valid arguments in both directions. We saw when the Houthi group chats were leaked a few months ago, Vice President Vance was very much against carrying out any sort of strikes against the Houthis because he said something like 2 or 3% of the ships moving through that region are American. Like a very small percentage of American cargo ships are actually moving through the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. So while it is an impact to us, it is not nearly the impact it is to other countries around the world. His point being, should we be committing this much of a force, this much money, and this many military resources to an area that has such a small percentage of an impact on the U.S. economy? That is a valid take. And the argument there would be that they are better utilized somewhere else, like the Asia-Pacific theater, right? Maybe helping to protect Taiwan. The other side of this is that the Houthis are a terrorist organization, and the United States is out there protecting freedom of navigation writ large. So freedom of navigation does not just mean we get to travel the seas freely. It means that we're protecting that for everybody to be able to do that. That was generally the argument under the Biden administration, that we were there protecting overall freedom of navigation. But again, I think that is probably a good thing. The counter argument to that is if we have a higher priority issue elsewhere, we can't be fully committed everywhere all at once. So if we truly are talking about a shift to the Pacific and trying to reallocate resources there, then we absolutely cannot have more and more resources dedicated to the Middle East. So again, to me, there's a couple different policy opinions there. Neither one is wrong so long as the actions back up that policy stance. Now, talking about the planning of this operation, they say now General Kurilla, the commander of U.S. Central Command, proposed an 8 to 10 month campaign in which Air Force and Navy warplanes would take out Houthi air defense systems. Then he said U.S. forces would mount targeted assassinations modeled on Israel's recent operation against Hezbollah, 3 U.S. officials said. All right, there's a lot to unpack there. First off, 8 to 10 months to suppress or degrade enemy air defense systems, that is a very long time. And I think it gives us an idea of how complex the Houthi air defense network actually is. And when I say complex, there's a couple different ways to interpret that. It's either that they have a lot of air defense assets, they're well hidden, they're well protected, or possibly we have no idea where they are at all. 10 months to effectively degrade their air defenses is significant. Like, it didn't take us that long to essentially wipe out the Iraqi air defense systems, right? Like, this is a long, long time for a suppression of enemy air defense campaign to be carried out. So I think for anybody who's been downplaying the Houthis as this rogue random group that's just occasionally launching missiles, like, they have a significant arsenal. They have significant capabilities, and they've built up those capabilities throughout the Civil War, especially during their conflict with Saudi and other nations fighting on behalf of the Republic of Yemen. On top of that, this assassination model, I never know if assassination is the right term there. I feel like that gives it a different framing than maybe it should. Going after senior leaders of the organization like we do with Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, and as they mentioned, Israel did against Hezbollah. I don't think the pager operation was in the cards. Maybe that was the direction we were going. But nonetheless, it does seem like that's something we were trying. That was a good direction to go in. And we talked on this channel quite a few times that just going after some of their launch sites and ammo storage facilities was never going to end this conflict. You needed to change up your targeting and go after senior leaders. At this point, after 30 days of daily strikes, more than that even, there's no indication that any senior Houthi official was eliminated. And, it's possible that the Houthis are just keeping that information well hidden, but then I would say, why is the United States, Saudi Arabia, Israel, nobody else releasing that information for propaganda value? We have no confirmation from anyone involved here that senior Houthi officials were actually taken out during the course of the last month. Not one. So think about that in terms of the effectiveness of this campaign. They say at some point, General Kurilla's 8 to 10 month campaign was given just 30 days to show results. The White House began pressing Central Command for metrics of success in the campaign. The command responded by providing data showing the number of munitions dropped. Yeah, it's like we haven't learned anything. If that is accurate, you got to take all the reporting with a grain of salt. But if our DOD, Central Command, is genuinely answering questions on the effectiveness of a campaign by saying, well, we dropped 50 new bombs yesterday, or we attacked 200 targets, like, in no world is that a metric of success. And I imagine most people watching this hear that and kind of cringe a little bit and say, no. We've done that before, right? Countless conflicts. We've tried that metric to say, well, if we carry out more attacks, then we're more successful. Clearly, It's the results of those strikes. Sometimes you can drop 50 bombs and you don't get the desired effects on target. It's not an effective strike, right? Other times, one bomb does the trick. That's what needs to be measured. I don't think that's crazy. I think it's crazy that they actually went that route, but the allegation here actually kind of fits. If you look at some of the limited information we have from the Defense Department talking about this Operation Rough Rider, that is what they've talked about. They've not talked about results, by and large. They've talked about number of targets hit, number of airstrikes, number of bombs, things like that, which, again, is a data point. It's nowhere near a metric for success. And the people at DOD, I would imagine, know that. There's a lot of really, really smart people in DOD and Central Command. They know that. They've come up through the ranks knowing that number of bombs does not automatically translate to success or failure. The other piece here, talking about how General Carrillo was given, this 8 to 10 month campaign was signed off on, and then he was told 30 days later, have you achieved your results? And there's a couple different ways to look at that. I mean, like, if he was blindsided, that's a problem in any situation. In this context, we're looking at a military campaign, but in any personal situation, right? Say you've got 10 months to get your finances in order, and then 30 days later, somebody says success or failure. You either did or you didn't, right? 10 months to get in shape, and then 30 days later, you're assessed whether you did or you didn't. Now, that would be frustrating, because if you're planning an 8 to 10 month campaign, you expect it to take longer than 30 days. And there's things that you might not have rolled out yet, certain target sets you may not have engaged yet. On the other hand, I would expect that General Carrillo and Central Command had benchmarks, and they were following a path and saying, by the 30-day mark, we need to see some sort of results that were at least moving in the right direction. If that was the case, I think that's a good thing. That is something that our military, all militaries, and all businesses should be doing around the world, right? And we want to see that. This is where this kind of the two sides of the coin here in this New York Times piece, where I think that's being presented as this gotcha. Like the president couldn't even give it 8 months. At 30 days, he got impatient and had to get out of there. But look, this reassessment and figuring out what's working and what isn't, and are we on the right path, I think is a really important thing to do. And it's probably the kind of thing that would have prevented us from being in Afghanistan as long as we were. If there were hard decisions made much earlier in that conflict, like much, much earlier in that conflict, I'm talking about like 03 to 07 timeframe, maybe the war would have taken a different direction. Now, the counter to this, what I don't like about this is a personal opinion, is if we are getting involved anywhere to any degree with military force, I think we need to be prepared to see that through to the end. And if there's an indication that at 30 days we're not quite getting there, we're ready to walk away, I don't know that that justifies putting our sons and daughters in harm's way. Remember, our sailors out there in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden have been dodging Houthi missiles and drones for months now. I don't think it's fair to them. I don't think it's an appropriate use of our military to put them in harm's way just to kind of see if something maybe works for a month, with the idea that we're going to walk away if it doesn't. And there's a fine line there, right? We need to be flexible and able to adapt, but it's a big ask to put people's lives at risk like that. Now, there's also some pretty suspect data in this report that's worth bringing up, because I did see some people point to this to immediately write off the entire report. I don't think I would quite go that far, but this is a little bit odd. It says in those first 30 days, the Houthis shot down 7 American MQ-9 drones, around $30 million each, hampering Central Command's ability to track and strike the militant group. Several American F-16s and an F-35 fighter jet were nearly struck by Houthi air defenses, making real the possibility of American casualties. That possibility became the reality when 2 F-18s fell off the carrier. Here's what's suspect there. This is the very first report, and I've been trying my best to track this day in and out. This is the first report I've heard of any F-16s being used at all, and it's the first report I've heard of an F-35 nearly being hit. It's our stealth fighter, right? Our most advanced stealth fighter. So that causes some credibility concerns with the overall article, I'll say. Now, it's possible that both of those things happened. CENTCOM, again, was not putting out a lot of detailed information about the types of platforms being used in these strikes. Technically, F-16s could have been used, but it's weird that F-16s are mentioned, but not F-18s that were the primary platform in striking the Houthis for months on end now. So maybe they mixed those up, but it's the credibility kind of thing here, where either the reporters don't know the difference or they don't know the significance of what they're saying, and that, you have to call into question other aspects as well. The F-35 being nearly hit, there's a wide range here when you're talking about the interception of aircraft. This could be, it was identified on radar, it was locked on, there was a munition fired, all the way up to it sustained damage or was even shot down. I don't think there's any indications that an F-35 was hit or shot down that I've seen. I wouldn't write it off entirely that it was targeted. And I think a lot of folks look at this as like it's a complete fabrication, it's a complete lie. I'd put it at a low chance, but still a chance that it was targeted, because apparently some of the older Russian surface-to-air systems are actually more effective at picking up some of our stealth fighters than the newer stuff, just some weird glitchy stuff with the technology. So I wouldn't write it off entirely. Low probability is probably where I would leave it. And the reason I say that is, again, our F-35 stealth fighter being targeted by the Houthis and nearly hit, as this article says, is a groundbreaking story. It's possible that it happened, but it would be surprising if that massive story is buried down as a minor detail in this larger article. Again, kind of makes me feel like the reporters here maybe don't know what they had, or again, possibly mixed up some of the nomenclature. But either way, it does, it adds some credibility questions to the rest of the article. Now, in terms of the overall roll-up, they say by the end of the first 30 days of the campaign, the cost had exceeded $1 billion. So many precision munitions were being used, especially long-range ones, that some Pentagon contingency planners were growing increasingly concerned about overall stocks and the implications for any situation in which the United States may have to ward off an attempted invasion of Taiwan by China. And through it all, the Houthis were still shooting at vessels and drones, fortifying their bunkers, and moving weapon stockpiles underground. And they've continued. We've seen in recent days the Houthis have launched additional missiles against Israel. No indication that they've carried out any attacks against U.S. aircraft or ships in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. There's a rumor about a drone shoot down earlier today, but that hasn't gotten anywhere near close enough for approval. Some pretty sketchy sources are throwing that out, and that's all I've seen. So overall, looking at this piece, I do like the reassessment of our strategy, of our position. And I know I kind of contradict myself in moving through that, because I want to see the flexibility, but I also want to make sure that when we commit force to a problem like this, that we are committed to actually using that force and seeing it through to some sort of conclusion. And I understand how that can be viewed as, well, you can't have it both ways. And I got it. I'm a human. I'm flawed. But I like the flexibility piece here. I think we need more of that in our foreign policy to be able to adjust course when things are not going as we expected. On the other hand, I'm a little bit concerned that maybe we stepped into this one expecting it to be taken care of sooner, and there may have been an expectation that the Houthis would be substantially degraded in the first 30 days, and really there were no indications that we were ever going to be able to wipe out the Houthis or shut down that movement entirely from airstrikes alone. So if that was the assumption going in, that makes me a little bit concerned that our view of this organization, their capabilities, was not maybe what it should be. But nonetheless, I think there's a lot of nuance in this article. Again, it was probably presented as a gotcha, look at how Trump failed, but I think there's some things in here that are concerning and others that are probably moves in the right direction for the United States. But let me know what you think. Again, I'll have it linked in the description below. That's all I got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.